How do you process your synths? Is the outro music ever going to be released? I love that tune. It's not actually twice as loud because of it being a bass 10 decibel system, but whatever. You need good, thick. If a sound isn't quite working, go back to the original sound. Forget processing it. Coronavirus. Coronavirus. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday. It's time for another Ask Me Anything. Ask me anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, is there any house admin? I don't think there is because... same as last week and the week before-ish, it's just been album stuff over and over again. I cannot believe how much admin type research and whatever there is involved in this. I think I've bitten off way more than I could chew, but I'm way past the point of no return, so I've just got to keep going. But I think it's also fair to say that there should be some nice surprises coming up on this channel, and especially my Patreon and in general. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. Yeah, I'm just hoping it'll all be worth it in the long run. I think. I hope. Who knows? But yeah, there's so much to do and so little time to do it, especially as last night I was woken up by a burst pipe in the bathroom. But there we go. I don't think there's many to get through today, so I'm just going to go straight for it. Gold Toast. Hey Dom Glitch, high five. How do you process your synths? I've been trying to get my synths to sound better with processing, like the deadmau5 pluck for example, but I can never get to sound just as good as my reference tracks. My synths are always a bit lacking, but I can't really put my finger on it. Just more dull and boring compared to others. How do you process your synths, and do you have any tips? So... that's probably a good example with the deadmau5 plucks. There's not much processing going on in terms of it's if I remember, four oscillators, if that even, with a saw wave going through a low pass filter envelope generator, has open filter on the attack and decay, very, very short sustain, short decay. Yeah, and you just slowly open the cutoff filter as and when you want. There is a little bit of reverb just to add some space, which I think is tip number one for if you're wanting to add space into short sharp sounds. If you like short sharp sounds but you want a bit more space in the track or a bit more depth in the track, I find reverb is often good. You've just got to be very careful with it. You know, something like those plucks, you know, you could have maybe a 2-3 second decay time on reverb, but you want your wet level at, I don't know, 5%, maybe 10% at a push. So it kind of needs to be quite subtle in the background, and it just basically fills the spaces. If you want to be a little bit more clever with it, then what you could do is send because a lot of people will sidechain the plucks, which is fine. But if you want to then add another layer in, it's sometimes good to send the plucks to a return channel, to an effects channel, and have the reverb in there, and have the reverb at 100% wet, and then really heavily sidechained as well, and then just mix it in, you know, to to your taste, and that just kind of makes that reverb pulsate around the beats. Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't really do much processing on my synths. I kind of just, I've always said, and I think I've said it on this channel before, if you feel like you need processing on your synths, for example, then you've maybe selected the wrong sound in the first place. You haven't quite nailed the sound design, and that's the bit that maybe needs a bit more work. So, and I think as maybe that comes across as a bit shitty, I don't know, but I think it's just one of those things where a lot of people as music producers now kind of feel like there's some sort of magical elixir that makes everything sound better, and I don't think that is the case. I think for a good sounding track, it's all about having well selected instruments. So your kick drums need to complement your claps need to complement your hi-hats, your hi-hats need to complement your synths need to complement your bass line. Everything needs to complement each other and work together as a whole track. You know, you could have the best sounding kick drum on earth and the best sounding bass line on earth, but that doesn't mean they work together. You know, they on their own they could be the best insert instrument here ever, but shove them together and it could just sound horrible, because if you've got two of the best things ever, they don't always work together. So I think it's important to try and remember that. So, you know, again, I'm going to use these plucks as a case point because you did, and I think they're a good example. So you need to strip it back to just a kick drum. Find a really nice full-bodied kick drum with a nice sharp transient, no distortion, nice and clear, nice and clean sounding, with a good deep thud, but a sharp transient. One that maybe isn't too long, quite a short kick as well. And have your plucks, I'm going to assume they're in eighth notes, for example, and have your plucks in eighth notes and just have those together. Maybe throw in a short, sharp clap really low in the mix and just play with them together. Now, they should sound beautiful because those two things are proven time and time again. You know, look, we all know Faxing Berlin, for example, you know, it's barely anything other than kicks, claps, and eighth note plucks. But that's the beauty of it, is the simplicity. If those individual kicks, claps, and plucks just sound great together, they complement each other, they all work together as a team making that track, and I think that's the really important bit. So rather than thinking that you need to process them, you know, there's not really anything you need to there's not really anything you should need to do to those sounds to make them sound good. So if they don't sound good, then it's probably not the right sound. So you need to maybe go back to the oscillators or the filters, or maybe slightly detune, or maybe tune them better, or definitely the envelope shapes will have a big difference. Also, the number of voices on your oscillators will have a difference, so play with that. Go from one voice to 4, 5, 6 voices and back again. You know, see if that adds a bit more depth and thickness to the sound. It should sound really rich. Yeah, so I think that's maybe my tip, is rather than processing the sound to make it better or whatever, maybe go back a few levels and just strip everything back just down to those plucks and you know, say kicks and a clap, or something really basic, where you should, in theory, if that's a sound you like and that's the sound you're going for, then in theory you should be able to play, you know, an 8-bar loop and just leave it loop for an hour and just still love it, because that's when you know you've really nailed the sound design. Is when you can just leave it on loop all day and just enjoy it for what it is. And As for more dull and boring compared to others, lacking something you can't put your finger on, I think the lacking bit is probably in the sound design. It's just the slight little nuances, and I wish I could put them into better words of what these nuances are. But usually it's kind of a frequency thing. I suppose there's a sort of sometimes it might be the notes you're using, the notes you're playing. I know, if I remember rightly, I think Deadmau5 with something like Faxing Berlin is the same notes over about 3 octaves, maybe 4 even. I'm sure there's 3 octaves of the same notes. So let's say the root note is D. I don't know what it is, probably E flat, but it'll be like E flat 0 or 1, E flat 2, E flat 3, and then if there's any harmonies on top, then they'll be on top of that, or maybe in the middle, so that it then sounds like the top triad is an inverted chord. So I think that's maybe something to focus on as well. That's what gives it that richness and depth and width in frequency. And then with glistening top end, a lot of that just comes from the reverb. Just focus that reverb on the high frequency, on the plucking element of the pluck, of the initial attack, because that's what you're looking for, is that sizzle up top. Outside of that, you shouldn't really need much processing. I mean, sure, you could EQ it. You could put a high shelf and raise the high shelf, I suppose. That would add something. I mean, you could multiband compress it, but all of these are kind of just bodge fixes, I think. I feel like putting those on a synth to try and add sizzle or air is kind of a bodge, because a synth, you should be able to make sizzle or have air or have deep low bass or whatever just by choosing the right notes on the right sound. You should be able to make that deep and rich and whatever. Anything else is kind of an afterthought substandard fix. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully I haven't just made you go, damn it. Also, the shuffle only Spotify free account playlist thing is only on mobile. Oh, okay, didn't know that. If you use desktop version, you can choose to listen in order or shuffle mode. Free version just has commercials. Okay, does the free version have commercials on mobile, or is it just 2 different things? That's interesting. Didn't know, because I pay for Spotify, because I have a family of Spotify listeners. But that's good to know. Not Your Human. Is the outro music ever going to be released? I love that tune. Probably not. I've never thought about it, to be honest, until you've just mentioned it. I wrote that for an idea I had in my head of some TV advert stuff. I'd been given a brief for some TV advert stuff in one format, and then that made me go, oh, what about this? And I'll write this just to keep in my library, just in case someone ever asks for this. And no one ever did ask for that, and I don't think I ever really finished it. And then when it came to putting together the outro video for this YouTube channel, I kind of just threw that in there because it worked, and I thought, yeah, that's got a bit of a thing to it. So I guess no is the answer. I don't know, if enough people maybe demand it, maybe one day I'll put it out there. I don't know. Where would it go as well? Because at the moment I think the track's only like a minute long, and I don't think there's like a main melody or lead or anything like that. So where would it go? I don't know. Maybe we can all work on it together. Silent Warrior. Hi, Dom. Yes, with drone, I probably meant room resonances. It is like someone pressing the bass boost button on a hi-fi system. The bass range is boomy. Some kind of drone. The room is buzzing. This is exactly why I suspected the frequencies above 60 Hz are more likely to cause this problem than below 60 Hz. Yeah. Sometimes we deal in harmonies as well, remember, and octaves, and our ears are not very good at spotting the difference until they're trained to spot the difference. A classic example is in the UK, we have our electricity supply is 50 hertz. And sometimes if you have a 12-volt power supply DC unit that feeds maybe one of your synthesizers or your computer or laptop or whatever, you can hear a slight buzzing. And that buzzing we call a 50 hertz hum. It's not 50 hertz, it's usually 100 hertz because it's double the 50, because you're catching the square wave up and the square wave down, and it's actually a harmonic of 50 hertz. But we call it the 50 hertz hum because the electricity is traveling at 50 hertz, even though the noise we're hearing is not necessarily 50 hertz. I don't know why I gave that useless piece of information. I felt like it was related. Yeah, it kind of is. So yeah, so what you're thinking is the 60 hertz might be 120 hertz. But I would suggest, if it's your room, then you can first of all grab, if you've got a microphone, grab a free piece of software called Room EQ Wizard. It's a bit fiddly, but you can calibrate your sound card and your microphone, and there are tutorials. I'm sure someone's done one on YouTube. If not, then maybe we could all do one together for this channel. I don't know. But it's fairly straightforward. It's a little bit weird, but basically you can set up your microphone on a stand in your listening position, and it'll just sweep through some sine waves through the frequencies, and it will tell you where you're getting what's called a standing wave. So for example, if let's say this room, in fact this room, I use a different piece of software. I won't go into that yet because that's next on my list, but this speaker is bursting out 100 hertz sine wave. 100 hertz is about that big in real world terms. So if it hits that wall and the standing wave, if the wave is coming out the speaker in this direction and then hits the wall and bounces back in the exact same direction, it's now twice as loud in that position where the two waves clash, where it bounces off a wall and comes back and hits itself. It's now twice as loud. It's not actually twice as loud because of it being a base 10 decibel system, but whatever. The point being is you get a standing wave which makes certain frequencies sound extra loud in certain rooms, and it depends on where your speakers are in the room, where they are compared to the wall, how far apart your walls are, how far apart your floor and ceiling are, where you sit within all of those measurements of the room, the density of the walls, what the materials your walls are made out of, all sorts of factors in there. So it's not an easy fix necessarily, but there are ways. So in this room, for example, I'm currently in a temporary studio, and I've got GIC acoustic stuff, as you can see right in front of me. There's also a big bass trap behind me. There's also two each on the walls either side, and I've got corner traps as well. And even then it's not perfect in this room. It's kind of absorbing as best as I can, but the room is just a bad shaped room. So that then leads me on to my other thing. I have SonarWorks, if I can open it up here, open. So it's SonarWorks Reference 4 that I have here. And I can see what you do is you have a test microphone, and rather like Room EQ Wizard, which is free, this is a paid thing. So it is a little bit easier and a bit more advanced, and also it can correct for the room as well. So where Room EQ Wizard kind of tells you, oh, you've got a massive spike at 100 hertz, therefore you need to try and tune your speakers down a bit at 100 hertz or whatever. Something like SonarWorks Reference 4, it just does it for you basically. So this room, I can see there's a spike at 120 hertz, which is pretty common. So like you were saying about the 60 hertz, and I was saying about if you double that, it's actually the harmonic you're hearing, it's the 120 hertz. That's basically the same for most rooms, because most people's rooms are sort of between 2 and 3 meters, and just because of the nature of the physics of waves, of audible waves, I should say, particularly in the bass, they just tend to sort of clash around that area. It just seems really, really common in so many rooms I've worked in or tested in or whatever. It's always around that 120 hertz area. So there we go. It's above 60 hertz. In fact, it's double 60 hertz. It's 120 hertz. I think we're getting down to the fact that it's probably your room. For 120 hertz, you probably need some corner traps, maybe a bass trap. All of these things are not cheap. Don't go for those egg carton shaped foam pieces of crap because they don't do anything. All they do is diffract high frequencies slightly. So they make your room a little bit more dead, but they really don't absorb the lower frequencies. For lower frequencies, you need good, thick material. Things like beds and sofas are good if you're at home. So yeah, and only a bed if you've got a really good quality mattress. So I think that kind of covers what you're saying. But according to your definition of sub bass 40 to 80, I slowly understand why my mixes were always so boomy. For me, this range was already bass and not sub bass. That's why I never thinned out or paid enough attention. We like bass. I did a low cut at 30-40 hertz and thought everything would be okay, but it wasn't. My thought was, if someone without a subwoofer, large speakers, complains of too much bass overall frequency, then the problems must be higher than 60 hertz due to small speakers. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But then I don't want to confuse you, but then you've also got sub-harmonics, which are like harmonics, but below. Anyway, and it's really hard to understand what some people mean by too much bass. 100%. So I wanted to understand that for myself so that I could do something with this feedback. And my idea was too much bass in the car means too much 60 to 120 hertz because small loudspeakers cannot go that deep. Yes. Feedbacks are very confusing when they come from people who have nothing to do with music production, but they are still hints that I want to investigate. Yes. Thanks a lot for the answer. Your answer really helped me. Also, the note about the wattage reserve of a speaker and the 300 hertz mud. Best channel. Thank you very much. You're welcome. So yeah, I would look at, I don't know what your room is. I'm going to guess it's about 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 meters by 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 meters. Pretty average room size. If that's the case, I can almost guarantee it's that 120 hertz spike. So I would first of all recommend using Room EQ Wizard. There should be tutorials over YouTube on how to read it and what to do about it. Be aware that there are some people on some forums who get crazy nerdy about these sorts of things, and they'll argue about the difference between 40 hertz and 41 hertz. Take it all with a pinch of salt. It's not that, it's not, weirdly, as much as I am an engineer and believe in following the science, it's kind of not an exact science, just because, it is an exact science, but if you were to exact every factor in rooms, then you'd be in a multi-million-dollar complex, and that's not happening. So when you're talking about stuff on a budget and doing stuff at home, it's never going to be perfect. That's just a fact of life, so don't worry too much. You just want to get the main bulk of it, basically. But yeah, if Room EQ Wizard, when you check, like I think they call it the waterfall graph, when you check that, you'll see how many delays there are and how it'll show you different spikes, basically. So you'll see around 120 hertz. If you imagine my screen is the graph, low down at 120 hertz, you'll see it come forward quite a lot, and that means there's a delay in there, which is usually it means it's created a standing wave, which means it's bouncing off itself between the walls, which causes that big spike. If you see that, then it means that's what you need to be dampening, and the way to dampen 120 hertz is usually with corner bass traps. We'll do a good thick bass trap as well, so a big, talking about at least that thick acoustic paneling. Look, if you want to really get into it, you can make them yourself. They're not that expensive. Like, I use GIC acoustics because they were helpful when I was building my last studio. And they were great panels. But realistically, you could make them yourself for a fraction of the cost. A simple wooden frame, some good quality rock wool. I forget the density. I think it's 45 kilos per cubic meter or something, and upwards is what you're looking for. But anyway, all the information's there on the internet. Check it out. Right, Not Your Human reminder, check Soothe. Mr. Bill did a nice video on it. Also Glitch, high five. So yeah, Soothe, thank you for the reminder. I've not watched Mr. Bill's video. I keep meaning, I know I've said this before, the same goes for podcasts and videos and stuff. I have there are so many out there that I want to watch on a regular basis. I feel like I'd have to give up my career to be able to watch all the things I want to watch. And unfortunately, Mr. Bill's is on that not quite at the top of the list thing, so it just never gets watched. However, Soothe I did look into, and while I think it looks very clever, it's maybe not something that I would need myself. So it is what it is. I'm intrigued by the whole AI type angle on EQ. I think it could be a good thing, but I also think it could be something that's just not quite hitting the bit, but we don't know until we try it. So I don't know. I'd be keen to try it. I might maybe try a demo or something at some point, but I really don't. I feel like it's more of a vocal thing. I feel like EQing, as much as it can be an art, using an EQ itself is not really. It's kind of a basic science in that this sounds too bassy, I'll cut out some bass. This sounds too high pitched, I'll cut out some treble or whatever. I tend to only ever subtractive EQ as well. If I think something sounds a bit too muddy, like I explained earlier on, I'll drop 300 hertz a bit. But going back to the beginning of this video, my number one rule is if a sound isn't quite working, go back to the original sound. Forget processing it, forget EQing it. Clearly with a vocal, you can't necessarily tweak the person's voice, so you'd need to EQ that. But if we're talking about a VST synth, let's call it, Sonic Academy's Anna 2, and you create a sound and you think, oh, this sounds too dull, well, open up the filter a bit. You don't need to add EQ onto that and high shelf raise it. It's already got a built-in filter. You've probably just low passed it too much. It's usually something as simple as that. Anyway, I can see Cavacay's replied, basically, Mr. Bill's videos on anything are worth watching, in my humble opinion. I probably agree. I've seen 2 of his videos in total, and I did enjoy them. So, yeah, if you're happy watching my videos, this is now coming to the end. Go watch Mr. Bill. And yes, Fire Apple Red Glitch, high five. Yanis Lockmelis, high five. I've just noticed, has your name changed, Yanis Lockmels? And I've been saying Lockmelis all this time? Or was it always Lockmels and I'm an idiot? If so, I apologise, but Glitch, high five. That, my friends, is it. I can see I'm coming up to the half an hour bit, so I've actually kept it quite short this time, which is pretty good. Oh, good for you. So, to comment the word, let's have a look. To show that you've made it this far into the video, do you know what? Comment the word coronavirus, because that is all over the news and all over my recommended videos, whether they be music related, news related, Joe Rogan related. It's a coronavirus everything this week, and to be fair, rightly so. I hope that all of you are safe and well, and I hope that you will stay safe and well. As much as some people are sort of mocking the panic and whatever, and I don't think there's any reason to panic necessarily, I do think there is every reason for us to be a little bit more vigilant in this day and age, especially when it comes to a new strain of disease that is not the flu, so we don't have any immunity. And those of us that have newborn children or grandparents, more importantly grandparents, I think, just be very careful and stay safe and stay sensible. yeah, there we go. I'll see you this time next week. Cheers.